When we think of Brazil, we often imagine vibrant cultures, the Amazon rainforest, and a deep indigenous heritage. But one of the most fascinating questions in history is this: how did the first indigenous peoples arrive in Brazil thousands of years before the Portuguese? The story of human migration across the globe is full of mystery, and South America, particularly Brazil, holds some of the most intriguing clues. Scientists, archaeologists, and anthropologists have debated for decades about the origins of the first people in the Americas. Did they all come by land through the frozen north, crossing the Bering Strait? Or could they have arrived by sea, navigating across vast oceans long before European explorers? In this video, we will explore the most accepted theories, alternative ideas, and surprising discoveries, like the skull of Luzia, one of the oldest human fossils in the Americas. By the end, you'll see that the journey of the first Brazilians is more complex and mysterious than most people realize. The classic theory, crossing the Bering Strait. The most widely accepted explanation for how humans reached the Americas is known as the Bering Land Bridge theory. Around 15,000 to 20,000 years ago, during the last ice age, much of the Earth's water was locked up in glaciers. As a result, sea levels were lower, and a land bridge called Beringia connected Asia and North America. Groups of hunter-gatherers followed herds of mammoths, bison, and other animals across this land bridge, slowly migrating into North America. Over thousands of years, these groups spread southward, adapting to new environments. Eventually, their descendants reached Central and South America, and some settled in what is now Brazil. Archaeological evidence, such as stone tools and genetic studies, supports this theory. DNA analysis of indigenous peoples across the Americas shows clear links to populations in Siberia and East Asia. This genetic footprint suggests that the first wave of migration came from Asia, spreading across the continents in multiple stages. But while this theory explains much, it doesn't solve every mystery. The timeline is still debated, and some discoveries in South America challenge the idea that all indigenous peoples came from the north. Alternative theories, arriving by sea. While the Bering Strait theory is the mainstream explanation, some scientists believe there may have been other routes. One fascinating idea is the Pacific Ocean theory. According to this, ancient seafarers from Polynesia or Oceania might have reached South America thousands of years ago. Evidence includes cultural similarities, such as agricultural practices and tools, and the presence of crops like the sweet potato, which is native to South America but was also found in Polynesia before European contact. This suggests that some form of contact between these distant regions might have occurred. Another controversial idea is the Australian or Melanesian theory. Some anthropologists argue that groups from Australia or nearby islands could have reached South America by traveling along the Antarctic ice or hopping between islands. This would explain why some early skeletons in Brazil, such as Luzia's, show features that resemble Australian Aborigines and Pacific Islanders rather than East Asians. Although these theories remain debated, they open the door to the possibility that the peopling of the Americas was not a single migration, but a complex process involving multiple routes and groups. The mystery of Luzia, Brazil's oldest human fossil. In the late 1970s, archaeologists made a stunning discovery in Lagoa Santa, Minas Gerais, Brazil. They unearthed a skull later named Luzia, believed to be over 11,000 years old. Luzia is the oldest known human fossil in the Americas. What makes Luzia extraordinary is not just her age, but her physical features. Unlike the skulls of modern indigenous peoples of the Americas, Luzia's skull had traits similar to Africans, Australian Aborigines, and Melanesians. This shocked scientists because it suggested that the Americas might have been populated by more than one migration wave. Some researchers believe Luzia's people may have represented an earlier migration from a different population, one that eventually disappeared or was absorbed by later groups. Others argue her features simply represent natural variation within early human populations. The discovery of Luzia continues to fuel debate. Was she evidence of an alternative migration route? Or does her existence simply remind us that human diversity in ancient times was far greater than we once thought? Tragically, Luzia's skull was damaged in the 2018 fire at Brazil's National Museum. Thankfully, parts of it survived, and digital reconstructions allow us to keep studying her mysterious legacy. Indigenous peoples of Brazil, diversity and culture. By the time Europeans arrived in Brazil in 1500, the land was home to millions of indigenous people. Estimates suggest there were between 3 and 5 million inhabitants, divided into hundreds of different tribes and ethnic groups. Each group had its own language, traditions, and way of life, adapted to the diverse landscapes of Brazil, from the Amazon rainforest to the Atlantic coast and the Cerrado. Some of the largest linguistic families were the Tupi-Guarani, Macro-Je, and Arawak. These peoples were skilled farmers, hunters, and fishers. They cultivated crops like cassava, corn, and peanuts, many of which are still staples of Brazilian cuisine today. What's remarkable is how these groups lived in deep connection with nature. Their social structures, rituals, and knowledge of medicinal plants reveal a sophisticated understanding of the environment. Despite not leaving written records, they built complex oral traditions that passed knowledge across generations. Today, Brazil is still home to around 305 different indigenous ethnic groups and over 270 languages. Although colonization brought disease, violence, and displacement, many communities continue to resist and preserve their identity. Their existence is living proof of the long and complex journey that began thousands of years ago. So, how did the first indigenous peoples arrive in Brazil? The truth is, we may never have a simple answer. The Bering Strait theory offers a strong explanation, supported by genetics and archaeology. But alternative theories, whether across the Pacific or even from Australia, remind us that human migration is rarely straightforward. Discoveries like Luzia's skull prove that history is always more complex than textbooks suggest. Perhaps the first Brazilians were the descendants of multiple waves of migrants, coming from different directions at different times. What matters most is not just the how, but the legacy these ancient people left behind. Their descendants, Brazil's indigenous peoples, continue to shape the nation's cultural identity, reminding us that their journey is far from over. The mystery of how humans spread across the globe, and eventually into Brazil, is one of the greatest stories ever told. And it's a story still being written, with new discoveries challenging our understanding every year. Now it's your turn. What do you think? Did Brazil's first people come only through the frozen north? Or could daring seafarers have reached these lands long before Columbus and Cabral? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more explorations into the mysteries of our past.